Good morning, everybody. I'm back after a week's break. I must admit, I'm normally very positive about the weather and changes, but I'm gone for 1 week to California, and this is what I come back to. I'm here for the entirety of September and October, and we go fall, summer, fall, summer, fall, summer, fall, summer. And I'm gone 1 week, and then winter decides to show up. So, I was hoping I'd bring some sunshine with me, but I brought quite the opposite. But anyway, that's just my weather talk for the morning. We shall be continuing our study of Psalms. Big thanks to Josh Yancey for covering for class last week. Appreciate his willingness to help out there. But we will be back in Psalms this morning. We're going to be in 3 different chapters this morning, all fairly short Psalms, but a part of a series of Psalms that are titled A Song of Ascents, or in different translations, a Psalms of Degrees. This actually covers the Psalms from chapters 120 to 134, but we're going to be focusing on these 3, and we're going to kind of have 2 sections of class today. We're going to talk about the text and what we think the text is about and what it does. But as the study book encouraged, these Psalms are a good opportunity to talk about the word of the day is application. Application. Can someone tell me what is application?
It's kind of the so what.
Yeah.
You learn this, and so what? So
Exactly. No, it's kind of the end. In our modern days, our minds might go to what smartphones have almost made commonplace of an application is just something on the phone that does something. Wow, isn't that cool? But in the way it embodies that aspect of it carries out something. It has a purpose. There is something to be learned or to be gained from, and application is how that thought is carried out. Application, or sometimes as I like to say, the context of something, can completely change how we view whatever it is that we're applying. You can even apply for things. You put in job applications. You are putting forth who you are, how you carry out yourself. An application is you writing down how you apply yourselves. And then businesses are looking, does this person apply themselves in a way that matches what we want, what we need? And so, yes, application in the context of how it's carried out is so very, very important. I have an object example. Would it upset people if I played some music with instrumentation for an object lesson in this class? Would that be okay? No, it's purely just this is music, and I want to use it to show how application can change in a thing. It has nothing to do, there's no words even, it's just a composition of music. I'm pretty sure it's been for use for quite a while now. It's a. I'll give you the background.
it was supposed to be a simple question.
Yeah, I just didn't want to upset anyone. But no, this has nothing to do with worship. This is just purely for lesson purposes. But let me give you the background on this piece of music. So, Entrance of the Gladiators. Some of you might know what I'm talking about. Some of you might not. But Entry of the Gladiators is a military march composed in 1897 by Czech composer Julius Fusik. Originally, he titled it Grand Marche Chromatique, reflecting the use of chromatic scales throughout the piece, but changed the title based on his personal interest in the Roman Empire. The march is subtitled Triumph March or Triumphant March. This military march has been seen many, many times throughout history, first being used for just simple grand entrances and such. During World War II, it was required to be played whenever SS officers would make entrances, and different members of the very specific members of the German army under Hitler's reign would come into camps. They would play this song as like, get ready, here comes someone very important, ooh, ooh. And then something happened in 1930. The Barnum and Bailey Circus made had a grand entrance for the clowns, who were dressed up as soldiers. And they thought this would be, oh yes, this is a funny way to like kind of like turn it on its head, because so many bad things it's been used for such like a negative context for many, many peoples. Let's make it into a farcical kind of performance. And since 1930, this song has not been used in a serious context since. If can I play the song? Okay. So just tell me, so this very serious military march, tell me what comes to mind when you hear it. No, this is a very serious military march. What are you talking about? What do you only think of when you hear this song?
Think of the circus.
Exactly. The application of that piece of music has made something that was meant to be so very serious and so very militaristic, and like you're supposed to imagine. And again, its original title is Entry of the Gladiators. This was played in an opera, where as these mighty men who marched into the arena to the cheer of the Roman crowd, they come in, just getting ready to fight. And that was the original intent of this song. And yet, through a wildly different application that somehow fit, we cannot imagine that song with anything else besides clowns tripping over each other and comedic effect. Yeah.
And there's a rising emotion, and it sets expectations, but the expectations change a little bit.
Exactly. Okay, and so with that in mind, when we'll get into this a lot deeper kind of in the second part of our lesson this morning, but think about the way that application, that the way that something is used or something is carried out can wildly change how that thing is viewed. So, first off, let's get into our text here. We're going to be in Psalms 125 through 127, if you want to be opening up to those chapters. But these are all shorter psalms in the stretch of the 120 to, I believe, 134. Yes, 134. These are all known as Psalms of Ascent. And the reason that the book encouraged the thought about application is we don't actually know what a song of ascent or a song of degrees, as the other translation put it, necessarily denotes the performance requirements. We don't actually know what is ascending. We don't know what degrees that the performance of or reading of the Psalms is supposed to go with. The historians have made some possible celebrations and things that these psalms might have been done with, but we can't find any actual documentation about these psalms being performed in a specific context. Some of the historians have theorized that it may have been sung by pilgrims as they approached Jerusalem for the great feast days. It might have been a song for ascending the steps during some phases of the temple construction. Some thought that worshipers might intone these poems for recording in psalms, or they may have been sung by worshipers who assembled the Temple Mount from Siloam Spring, as it talks about in the book of John, at the foot of the Temple Mount. And others even think that the words mean the voices would become higher in pitch as the procession would get closer to the temple. We don't know for absolute certain, but again, it's how we read the text and how we think about it going forward. One person might come to, and obviously many people have come to different conclusions about what this denotation, the Song of Ascents or the Song of Degrees, means. But the beauty of it is we're going to read some of it today, and you can come to your own conclusions. We can come to kind of a group consensus. Maybe this is what they were going through, but let's read some of the text and see what thoughts come up. So, starting in chapter 125, if someone would just read the whole of chapter 125, 1 through 5.
Those who trust in the Lord are as Mount Zion, which cannot be moved but abides forever. As the mountains surround Jerusalem, so the Lord surrounds his people from this time forth and forever. For the scepter of the wickedness shall not rest upon the land of the righteous, so that the righteous will not be put forth their hands to do wrong. Do good, O Lord, to those who are good, and to those who are upright in their heart. But as for those who turn aside to their crooked ways, the Lord will lead them away with the doers of iniquity.
All right, thank you. So, in our first chapter here, our first psalm, Song of Ascent, it starts off, those who trust in the Lord are like Mount Zion, which cannot be moved but abides forever. So here in the midst of our singing of things that are ascending, perhaps instantly they automatically invoke the name of something that is thought to be very tall, Mount Zion. When we think of mountains, we tend to think of them as quite tall. There are some mountains here in Wisconsin that, you know, people who live around other mountains might think, well, these are barely mountains. They barely crack that, you know, altitude requirement to be called mountains, but mountains nonetheless. But whenever we think of mountains, you often think of, you know, Mount Everest, Mount Fuji, tall mountains that it is like a life accomplishment just to climb them, that they go up so high. And even in our previous studies, we know that the Mount Zion that is invoked many times throughout the Bible is, it's the mountain of the Lord. It is something that is even higher beyond what we can comprehend, the tallest mountains. Songbook song alert there in verse 2. As the mountains surround Jerusalem, so the Lord surrounds his people. Surround us, Lord. Song that we sung growing up and throughout college, and again, not surprising because we are in the book of songs, so we tend to take lots of our songs from the words here. But again, as we think about what could the application be for the title Song of Ascent, we are immediately talking about here in our chapters being on a mountain, being on a high place, and feeling the security of having those mountains surround us, the Lord's comfort surrounding us. In the song, it talks about the Lord surrounds Jerusalem, so the Lord surrounds his people. The geographic makeup of Jerusalem was very well secured. That the city of Jerusalem was actually found on there were mountain ranges on all but one side, and even that one side had a river that came across, so it was difficult to approach if you were trying to conquer Jerusalem. That armies would come and they would not find a clear path to get into Jerusalem, and even more so, Jerusalem, of course, was well fortified, but it reflected in a way that song, as the mountains surround Jerusalem, so the Lord surrounds his people. We sing a song, A Mighty Fortress is Our God, that here on Mount Zion, already a tall place above where we think of the highest mountains, we have protection even on that mountain. Continuing on in verse 3, for the scepter of wickedness shall not rest on the land allotted to the righteous, lest the righteous reach out their hands to iniquity. Do good, O Lord, to those who are good and to those who are upright in their hearts. Where the Lord has decreed that there shall be good, the wicked will have no power. That even if wickedness tries to come and overtake the land of the Lord, the people of the Lord, that as long as we trust in the protection of the Lord surrounding us, that there will be no fear of wickedness. And there in verse 5, for as for such as turn aside to their crooked ways, the Lord shall lead them away with the workers of iniquity. Peace be upon Israel. We see there that the only way to be taken away from the Lord's protection is to turn away from it yourself. That if you stick to the Lord's commands, if you have faith in the Lord's protection in the mountain of Zion, that the only way to be taken out is for you to walk yourself out of the gate. As we talk about, the wide gate and the narrow gate in previous sermons and studies, that yeah, the path to walk is yours. If you know the path and you are able to keep an eye on the good path, then you have nothing to worry about. But as it talks about, sometimes it's not so easy to make your way down the narrow path because it's more difficult. But here we can have assurance that if we do walk the narrow path, there's not going to be anyone who's going to grab us at the finish line and drag us away. We have to walk off the path ourselves. Any other thoughts about this chapter? All right. So moving on to chapter 126. Chapter 126 is one verse longer. So if someone wants to read chapter 126, 6 verses.
When the Lord brought back the captive ones of Zion, we were like those who dream. Then our mouth was filled with laughter and our tongue with joyful shouting. When they said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us, and we are glad. Restore our captivity, O Lord, as the streams in the south. Those who sow in tears shall weep with joyful shouting. He who goes to and fro weeping, carrying his bag of seed, shall indeed come again with a shout of joy, bringing his sheaves with him.
All right, thank you much. So this seems a bit opposite. We just talked about in 125, those who have faith in the protection of the Lord will not be taken away from his protection. And yet we just talk about when the Lord brought back the captivity of Zion, we were like those who dream. But these people were in captivity, so what happened? We just talked about how secure Jerusalem was and how, it would be very hard to conquer it. So what happened? This is in the context of Jeremiah and Isaiah. What historically led up to this? They were conquered because they turned away from the Lord's will. In our study of Isaiah, we talked how the Israelites were so proud of the walls and the barracks. And we have all these weapons. We have the chariots. We have all this military strength. There's no way that someone can conquer us. And Isaiah says, guys, you're missing the point here. It's not about the walls and the mountains and the rivers and your wall and everything that you have yourselves. It's about the Lord protecting you. And to show them just how much that they needed to have faith in the Lord's protection, that all this stockpiling, and it wasn't necessarily the fact that they built walls that they had this military strength. It was the fact that the Israelite leaders started to push away all of the, the traditions of, the sacrifices to the Lord and things like that. They were completely and totally secure with just having all their military strength. They're like, yeah, no one can conquer us because we can fight them off even if the Lord isn't with us. Problems. And yes, the Assyrians come and take over and declare war on Israel, and eventually, the Israelites are taken into Babylonian captivity. That whole era there with, stories such as Daniel in the lion's den, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, all those that take place in Babylonian captivity, that is the era of time. God goes, time for them to learn a lesson, that it's not the walls, it's not the military, it's me. You are my chosen people. I want to protect you. You just have to listen to me. And so that is why suddenly we go from songs of secureness of as the mountains surround Jerusalem to we're out of our captivity. There in verse 1, when the Lord brought back the captivity of Zion, we were like those who dream. Then our mouth was filled with laughter. When something really good happens that kind of comes out of nowhere, what is a common English idiom that we say whenever something is just like suddenly so good? I must be dreaming. This cannot be this way. Whatever the context is, like I don't deserve this, or wow, this came out of nowhere, or whatever it might be. But yeah, no, that phrase is I must be dreaming. And here we see that reflected in the feelings of those who were able to come back to Jerusalem after generations of living in a foreign land, of being taken away from your homeland and forced to live and work in a totally different place. Yeah, they walked back in Jerusalem and said, I must be dreaming. I thought I would never see this place again. Or for the children who maybe were born in captivity of, I've only heard stories of this place, and now here I am. Then our mouths were filled with laughter and our tongue with singing. Then they said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us, and we are glad. They come back to the Lord's fold. They come back into the Lord's protection, and instantly they're filled with joy, with singing. Our tongues were filled with singing, and they said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us. We are glad. And then in verse 4, they say something very interesting. Bring back our captivity, O Lord, as the streams in the south. Those who sow in tears shall reap in joy. That is an interesting couple verses. What does that mean to you? And that's an open question. For a people who just got out of captivity and are now back in their homeland, why does the author ask for the Lord to bring back their captivity? That's where they figured it out. Sometimes it takes discipline for the lesson to really come through. If you're living in sin, if you're in the midst of a part of your life where you're stuck in something, oftentimes the person who's stuck in something can't get themselves out. If you're in quicksand, you can't just swim your way out of quicksand. You need something either to help you pull yourself out, or you need someone else to come and pull you out. In the same way that here we are seeing that they don't necessarily like, nope, put the shackles back on, I want to go back to Babylon. That's not necessarily what they're saying, but they want the people, the author wants the people to keep that mindset that they had during captivity, to remember who it was that got them out of captivity, what it was that finally ended the punishment. As those who sow in tears shall reap in joy. He who continually goes forth weeping, bearing seeds for sowing, shall doubtless come again with rejoicing, bringing his sheaves with him. This isn't to say that people who cry will immediately be comforted. That's not the point we're making here. It's someone who keeps in mind what it is that's important. And to these people, it was, we got taken away from our homeland and we had to live in a place that we were unfamiliar with people we didn't know, people who looked down on us and kept us pressed down. And thinking of the sorrow and the suffering that they endured during that time helps turn their minds to, Lord, help us. And that's all that God wanted, was for the people of Israel to keep that mindset of, Lord, help us. Because the minute that they start thinking we don't need the Lord's help is whenever things got difficult. And so when they say, he who continually goes forth weeping, bearing seed for sowing, we see here the person weeping is not just sitting in a corner thinking, oh, how bad things are, oh, woe is me. It's someone who goes forth like, I have to do this, because I remember what happens if I don't. That those who go forth with the mindset of service shall doubtless come again with rejoicing, bringing his sheaves with him. That kind of mindset going forth in work, in worship, whatever it is, that in itself will dispel sorrow and dispel suffering, and through it will bring rejoicing. Any other thoughts about the chapter here? All right, so then we'll move on to our final chapter, chapter 127. We go back to 5 verses. If someone wants to read chapter 127, this one says a song of ascents of Solomon. So this might be written by Solomon, or something written for Solomon, or perhaps the author just had Solomon on their mind when they were writing this. So let's read this here, chapter 127, 1 through 5.
House, they labored in vain who built it. Unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman keeps awake in vain. It is vain for you to rise up early, to retire late, to eat the bread of painful labors. For he gives to his beloved even in his sleep. Behold, children are a gift of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. How blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be ashamed. They will speak with their enemies in the gate.
All right, thank you. So, interesting the subtitle here, A Song of Ascents of Solomon. What are some things that Solomon is famous for? His wisdom, yes. What else? Sorry?
Having a lot of wives.
Having a lot of wives, yes. Wealth. What about things he did? He built the temple. The temple that David had thought about for a while, and the Lord came to him and said, did I ask you to build a house of cedar? But then Solomon comes along, and in the same way, again, has these talks with the Lord, is granted great wisdom and all these things, but also, yes, he builds the temple out of precious metals and stones, and it is apparently a great thing that you can't even imagine. Even by today's standards, it would be opulent, it would be luxurious, it would be decorative. And then what does the author say there in verse 1? Unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who built it. I don't know if this is supposed to be a poke at Solomon or something, but it's hard to know, because Solomon built physically the house, but it was with the Lord's blessing. So, do you think this is I think the author has some fun wordplay here, denoting it of Solomon and then talking about building houses in vain unless the Lord builds it. But I think the application, the meaning behind this verse is not necessarily, oh, haha, Solomon built that whole thing in vain. Isn't that funny? Because the Lord didn't come down and put the pieces together himself. No. We just talked about how a country that was secure in its geographical location, was secure in the Lord's protection, and yet had to go into captivity because they forgot where the protection came from. Here we see the author continues, unless the Lord builds the house, unless the Lord is the one who is behind the action is in vain. They labor in vain who build it. Unless the Lord guards the city, the watchmen stay awake in vain. It is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, and to eat the bread of sorrows. Or I like your translation, sorrowful labors. For so he gives his beloved, capital H, gives his beloved sleep. Behold, children, to eat the bread of sorrows, for so he gives his beloved even in their sleep. That, again, Israel could have put up 10 million soldiers and they still would have lost against the armies of Babylon, because it was the Lord's will. Because they did not have the Lord's protection anymore, because they had turned away from the Lord himself. Here we see that we can carry out all the actions we want, but if we don't have faith in the Lord, what are we doing really? Not much. Unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. He says it would be better for the watchman to just all stay in bed. But if the Lord is behind you, if the Lord is how you go forth sowing the seed while weeping, it's all in vain. And then it continues on in verse 3. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. Happy is the man who has his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but shall speak with their enemies in the gate. As a new dad, 1-year-old, 13 months, I'm getting the joyful part. I very much am feeling the joy that a child brings. That, of course, parents all have different experiences. That does not mean my experiences blanket covers everyone else's. But the meaning of this verse hits my ears differently than it might a young person who doesn't have kids yet. But then it makes a different kind of comparison. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. Children being like arrows, something that in their later years you send out for a purpose. It's an odd visual. I just imagine like a little like baby who's just woo. Yeah.
As you get older, they protect you.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you raise them to take care of themselves, and then later on in years, yeah, if things work out well, then yeah, they are a benefit to you. My parents, I just went and visited my in-laws, and my wife's grandparents are all living in an assisted living place, but I think my mother and father-in-law go and visit them like at least every other day, just to see how they're doing, to bring them things, to update them on world news and things like that. That yeah, as life goes on, you don't send out your kids and never see them again. If all goes well, then yeah, they come back and they are a benefit to you and benefit to others around them. But yeah, so they're not necessarily an instrument of destruction as we sometimes think of arrows, but happy is the man who has a quiver full of them, children. They shall not be ashamed, but shall speak with their enemies in the gate. They have such a comfort brought to them that they stand across from someone who they might not have gotten along with, who they might not see eye to eye on things, and they speak with them as if nothing were wrong. And this isn't to say, that, oh, well, everyone has to have kids, blah, 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 blah. We know that there are things that can keep that from happening, that not everyone's, life allows for such a thing. But the author talking about, the Lord building houses, and if it's not built by the Lord, if the Lord isn't a part of the action, then it's all in vain. Quickly switching into, behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. The author isn't saying everyone has to have kids because they have to know this joy. They're saying this is one of those things that the Lord has given us. That, yeah, having kids is meant to bring joy. That the decision to have a child is scary, comes with lots of anxiety and stress about, I have to keep this little thing alive. But the more and more you raise it, the more and more you see. Watching my kid toddle up and down the aisle has been the more recent just feeling of, like, look at it go. Look at the little thing go. That's not necessarily something that I did not grab her legs and move her feet. I've helped in a way, but that's not something that I made her to do. That's something that she's trying to learn herself. And that is something that is uplifting. And I think that's the feeling that the author is going for here, is that this is something that, with the help of the Lord, that's something that, will bring us joy. Any other thoughts about that chapter?
I was just thinking about the first verse, unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain. David wanted to build the house, but it wasn't God's will for David to build the house. And so it would have been in vain if he had done it, because it wouldn't have been, with the blessing of the Lord.
Right. David had a great many purposes to follow the Lord's will, but that wasn't one of them.
And he saved up a lot of stuff to go in it, and
Yep.
he did a lot to get ready for it, but
Exactly.
he didn't actually build it.
Yeah. As it says, there's a time and a place for everything.
Yeah.
And just because you're not the one who gets to carry out something in that time doesn't mean that God thinks that you're not capable of it, that God thinks that, you're not the right person to do this, but God is able to see the big picture. And he knew that it would mean more, that it would come across better if it was Solomon who built the temple. Yeah, excellent thought. Any other thoughts? Okay, So then we get to every preacher's kind of finishing here. It's something that I hear Baxter say quite often is, so what? We've read all these things. We've talked about the meaning of these. And so now it's time to think about application. So what do the overall, just this little section here of these chapters, what do you want to take out of these chapters and use in application? Yeah.
That if we let God surround us, He will, and He'll keep us safe. Not that we won't have problems and troubles, but we can lay down assured at night that, we're with Him. If we die, we're going to be His child.
Yeah. Yeah.
A good way to look at application, other than the so what we used to do in essays, so what, what's next? The what's next, okay, now you got it, you're applying it, what's next? What's the next step? What are you gonna do with it?
Yeah. You can have a plan, but then it's just like the steps of salvation. Hear, believe, repent, confess, be baptized. That's all the, hey, we're carrying this out. But then there's something beyond it, the live faithfully part. And yeah, a plan can go 100%, but if you don't follow up, if you don't make sure that what the goal was is being used correctly, it's just like a house that isn't built by the Lord. Actions that do not have the Lord behind them, the whole thing's in vain. Yeah, excellent thoughts. Any others? All right, so as we wrap up this morning, we talk about the Psalm of Ascents. And I didn't go and read all of the 120 through 134 chapters, but I did look at a few of them. And I'm probably not any closer than the other historians as to saying what exactly a Song of Ascents is meant to mean. But in the readings here, as we think about protection and comfort, actions with the Lord behind us, I just personally thought about the Mount Zion and being able to see the high places, giving you a vantage point. As we talked about arrows and archers and quivers, thinking about how archers always want to be on the high ground. They want to be in high places so that they can see. Being in the high place, being in the Lord's protection allows us to see where there are others who might also need help. That through our vantage point of being in protection, we can reach out and help bring someone into that protection. It's a lot easier to bring someone into a protected place than it is to just fight outside of the walls. And so a Song of Ascents, to me, brings to mind that through worship, through faith, through trusting in the Lord, that we gain a vantage point to help others, to bring others up to the Mount of Zion. And that's not the end-all, be-all meaning, but that's just the way that I think about applying this, is making sure I'm in a place where I can help others. Yeah.
So many times, if we travel miles, 600 miles back and forth to Tennessee over the years, so many times as we travel, we sing hymns and songs to keep me occupied. And I always think of these songs as something that they think of Joseph and Mary and Jesus traveling to the temple, and that was maybe a couple of days walk. I mean, it was, so it's possible that those were sang as they traveled, to think about the house where they were going and the history and things like that. That's just how I thought about the song.
Yeah. And then to wrap this all up, every single thought, opinion, application that you've brought up here, just because people come to different conclusions does not mean that any of them are necessarily wrong. Part of the power of psalms, of songs, is that different people can take different things out of it. Some people might feel secure in the way that they have faith in the Lord, and some people this might be the awakening that makes them go, okay, I need to have more faith. I need to let go of control more. And some people might see it in a different way, and some people read the same verse and come to different conclusions, and that's okay. It's good that we share the conclusions that we come to, because different applications can lead to stronger carrying out of what the verses mean. So it's good to share and to talk about what you get out of the Bible, what you get out of a specific verse. But remember that if someone comes to a different conclusion, that doesn't mean they read it wrong or didn't see what you saw. They're just coming from different points of life, different places in life. And that's the beauty of classes like this about discussion, is that we see things that other people might not have. You guys always have tons of thoughts that I just didn't get in my reading, even though I have an extra book that kind of helps me, is like, hey, have you thought about this and this and this? Even the book itself is part of the process of discussion. So thank you all for a wonderful class. Next week, we will be in chapter 139. Just one chapter this time. The past second and third week, we talked just in one chapter and went through multiple parts, and now we've done 3 chapters in one. Now we'll just stay in chapter 139. Thank you all for a wonderful class.